New Haven. My name is Miss Maren, one of your Food Corps service members for this year. November is Native American Heritage Month. Native Americans have been living on this land for over 15,000 years. That's way before any of my ancestors got here. Today, there are still 5 million Native Americans living on American land. Native Americans traditionally have a really strong connection to the land that they live on. They make sure to respect the land and only use the resources that they need. All Native Americans don't have just one culture. There are many different groups that have lived across the land with different religions, values, and languages. Today, we're going to take a virtual trip to California to talk to one of our friends, Katherine. Hi, Katherine.
Hello, my name is Katherine Webb. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, but I was born and raised in Southern California on Tongva land, where I am right now. My father is Cherokee and my mother is Scottish. I go to Yale College and I study environmental science and art.
So cool, Katherine. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm in New Haven, which means I'm on Paugussett, Wappinger, and Quinnipiac land. Why is it important to know whose land we're on?
I think it's really important to know whose land we live on because we can learn about the first people on this land and have respect for both the people and the land. It is a very interesting history and it isn't normally taught in school.
That is really important. Do you know anything about the Native Americans who lived on this land?
Great question. The Quinnipiac people are the indigenous inhabitants along the Atlantic shoreline of what is now New Haven, Connecticut, to Madison on the east and as far north as Meriden. Quinnipiac means the long water land. The long water land people lived in fishing camps along the water during spring and summer. They also would do controlled burns on the land, which was a technique to keep the soil healthy and to clear out brush. They also grew the Three Sisters. They also used hawks that they trained to keep crows away from their corn.
You mentioned the Three Sisters. Can you explain a little bit more about them?
Three Sisters are corn, bean, and squash. These three crops grow together and produce more food than if they were grown alone, because they help each other. The corn is planted first, and as it gets bigger, it gives support to the beans that grow up the corn stalk. Then the squash is planted. The squash stays low to the earth and has big leaves and makes shade for the soil so that the other sisters can grow big and tall. The Three Sisters represent connection and community for me. Two is just a couple, but three can be community.
Wow, so they all lend a helping hand, just like humans in communities. I remember you told me that you're a seed keeper. Can you tell us what seed keeping is?
Yes, so I am the seed keeper between the Native American Cultural Center and the Yale Sustainable Food Program. This means that I save and plant the indigenous seeds each season. Because seeds are a gift from the earth to feed us and give us health, Native peoples will give seeds to each other to thank each other and share our histories with each other. So when you save a seed, it's like sharing a part of your family history and your story.
Oh, what a great gift. Native Americans have such a great relationship with the land. What are some foods that we eat that are really important to Native culture?
So before this land was called North America by most people, it was called Turtle Island. There were no borders separating the current United States from Canada and Mexico. Before contact with Europeans, the indigenous people of Turtle Island planted and tended to avocados, beans, cacao, which is made into chocolate, corn, peanuts, chili peppers, potatoes, squash, sunflower, tomatoes, and more.
Wow, I love so many of those foods. Do Native Americans have any special farming practices?
There are many practices that Native people use to produce food, and it really depends on the indigenous peoples. I am Cherokee, and my people are agricultural, and we grow the Three Sisters. The cool thing about Native people is that they have incredible knowledge about the environment that they have lived on for generations. This knowledge is still very important today. Staple foods in an indigenous community are considered sacred. For example, in Northern California, the indigenous people depend on fishing salmon. The indigenous people of the plains depend on hunting buffalo. The indigenous people on the Great Lakes depend on growing rice.
Thank you for joining us today. Do you have any final messages for the students?
All living on indigenous land here on Turtle Island, so it's a fun way to learn about the history of the space. I was in a class at school 2 years ago, and we did a field trip to a forest just outside of New Haven to look at the trees and plant life. We found some shells and couldn't figure out why they were so far away from the water. But our teacher said that indigenous peoples put the shells in the soil because it helps keep the soil healthy, even though science didn't know it at the time. Pretty cool, right?
Thank you for Zooming with us, Katherine. I hope everyone learned something new today. I certainly did. Until next time.